Well, today is another interview video. This time it's with Pete Thomas from PMC Loudspeakers. So yeah, we're going to be doing a bit more of a series of these. So check the channel for more upcoming interviews with prominent people in the audio industry. Well, I'm here today with Pete Thomas from PMC.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hello. This is the second one we did actually. We did one a while ago, didn't we, Pete? But it went wrong because my chairs were way too squeaky, and it was just hilarious when we watched it back. All we could hear was chair noises. So this time, that's all right, isn't it? These ones from home, so these won't squeak at all. Right.
Like deja vu.
It does. It is a little bit. Right. So we'll forget all that. So yeah. So we're going to talk to you about your sort of life and times in the audio industry. But I guess you should really say how we met, which was the audio jumble.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, Tunbridge Wells. It's Tunbridge Wells, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tunbridge.
No, it's Tunbridge.
Oh, it's Tunbridge. I always get that wrong.
I know.
Yeah, John corrects me every time.
Yeah.
So we've got a mutual friend, John Howes, who started the audio jumbles. It's like a great big leisure centre where audiophiles can meet and sell all their stuff. And get to it really turned into a social event, hasn't it?
It is.
Yeah, mainly, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm buying less there and just talking more.
Oh yeah, I haven't been for a couple of years because I just know that it was good times there. Met a lot of people in the industry as well there.
Yeah.
So there's many notes. There we go. So PMC aside, where did your journey start in audio?
Probably started when I was a small child, I think.
Yeah.
My grandfather gave me a wind-up gramophone.
Okay.
I don't know, when I was about 7 or 8, I suppose, and a big part of 78s. And I was just thought it was magical that this thing, just wound up and you put this needle on the record.
Right, is it a horn one?
No, it was a little portable.
Columbia or something.
Yeah. And I just thought it was fantastic. And I think it got me interested both in the sort of how to reproduce music, but also, with music. I mean, I still collect 78s now because I just love them. I just love all that.
We had a chat briefly earlier, didn't we, about that?
Yeah.
Sort of jazz and blues.
Yeah, predominantly. Although I did like some dance band. I mean, to be honest, anything really. But I'm just fascinated by.
You got any Elvis on Sun?
No, sadly not. No, I'd be a rich man.
It's the only 78 I know of this.
Quite rare.
Yeah, it's the one that everyone goes to, isn't it? The Sun record stuff.
I know. But yeah, I just love. I just sort of love the whole idea of this music coming out of this thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it started. But then I when I got into the 60s, I had two a brother and sister who were much older than me.
Yeah.
And they brought home loads of 45, so I was sort of indoctrinated with all this 60s stuff. And then by the time I got to sort of teenage years, I was starting to buy my stuff, and then I got into hi-fi.
Yeah.
One of my cousins had an amazing hi-fi system. That probably was the first one I heard.
What year are we talking?
That would have been about 68, 69, I suppose. And he had a pair of Kefs, I think, Kef coders.
Yeah, the original coders.
Yeah, the old ones.
Yeah, they're good though. Good value now as well.
Yeah.
T27.
And I just couldn't believe how good they sounded. I mean, well, you got to remember in the 60s, most people didn't have stereo, and a lot of people were lashing up record players with a separate amplifier to sort of extend their mono.
Well, do you remember the original stereo thing? I think it was written in gramophone. They said 2 speakers, they don't have to be the same.
I know. Well, I took them at their word.
The odd ones.
Yeah, we had an old Murphy record player, and it had a socket on it that said to another amplifier, and if you unplug this linking thing, you could turn it into stereo. Because the cartridge was stereo, but it only played mono. And I connected up to my Ferguson tape recorder and used that as the other channel. And I thought that was hi-fi. This is. Did
it sound good? Could you hear the different?
Oh yeah. Well, you got to remember a lot of 60s stereo was very ping pong. Yeah, that's singing on one channel and the bass player
somebody walking
here.
across pinging a glass.
Yeah, it was
John Borwick thing.
So even if you had quite a poor system, you'd hear stereo, and of course that to me was incredible sound until I heard a proper.
I guess did it sound more like a novelty as opposed to what the?
No, I don't think so. No, I think we saw that as it gave you this big sense of sound in the room. Even
did you hear the original recordings? Those sort of first recordings the BBC put out.
I did later. Not at the time. No, but later on, I
didn't have to tune your radio into 2 different stations.
No.
That was one thing, wasn't it? The original test ones, I think.
No, I think I was probably a bit too young for that.
Oh yeah.
So early 60s.
So you were getting into it when there was.
Yeah.
Yeah, when there was proper recordings being played, proper program.
But I mean, we didn't have an FM tuner and stereo tuner then, not until the early 70s.
Right. Yeah.
Most people had mono. I mean, you
yeah.
know, although it'd been around since '57, most people, it was some tweaky, esoteric thing.
Yeah, it was 60 really when it probably
radiograms really kicked off for the mainstream.
Yeah.
In the sort of 66-ish, sort of 65. And then stereo sort of took off. Yeah. But not hi-fi, you know. That was for wealthy people. Yeah. But that's when I heard my cousin's system, and I just couldn't believe
that would have been I mean, we've all heard amazing systems now, obviously, but when you first hear how music can be played in the home, you go, that's ridiculous. That's I know. Better than a concert, and in many ways it is. Yeah, because you haven't got people coughing in front of you. Absolutely, you're not at mercy of the acoustic of the venue. Yeah, you know, and that's when I go to live music now, and sometimes I can't handle it.
I know. I must admit, one of my biggest regrets is that because I was so into my hi-fi in the 70s, I didn't go to a lot of concerts because I didn't like the sound quality. And I'd rather enjoy it at home. But retrospectively now, I think, oh God, I miss loads of concerts that I wish I'd gone to. But
I went to one recently in the Ali Pali, and the acoustic was so poor. Yeah, we walked out after 3 songs.
Oh, it's a shame, isn't it?
And you think, I guess and everyone else seemed to be enjoying it, but the acoustic was so hard on my ears. Yeah,
it drives you mad.
I couldn't do it. I think because you were in the audiophile business, and you have the luxury of hearing some amazing stuff, and tuning into it, and that's how you listen to music. Then when you do hear about acoustic, you can't do it.
No, I mean, I heard most of my bands in the 70s. I mean, in those days, I used to live near Margate, and in Dreamland Ballroom, they used to have a disco every week, and then in the middle they'd have a half-hour set by a band.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how I saw. I mean, like T-Rex would be the band that would come on for half an hour, or Slade, or those kind of
amazing.
And often we'd be sitting at the bar and we go, "Should we go over and see the band?" And they go, "Oh no, let's just have another beer," because it wasn't. The weird thing was, it wasn't such a big thing as it is now. It was like almost an interval for the disco.
Well, the only way these bands would get to play and get an audience. I mean, nowadays, obviously radio and internet streaming, you can listen to whatever you like at any time, can't you? Yeah. But back then it wasn't like that. No. You want to go listen to music, you had to go and find it.
You did, yeah. So I mean, jumping back to hi-fi, it was quite an eye-opener hearing great stuff, and so then I started looking at magazines and everything, and realised that I could probably put together something if I went up to London and went up to Tottenham Court Road, and there's a place called Henry's in where was that? That was in Edgware Road.
Edgware, yeah.
And you could buy cabinets and you could buy drive units. Oh, yeah. So I bought these cabinets in one shop, and I bought these EMI 13x8 with tweeters strapped across.
Oh the front, yeah.
And a bit of wadding. And put all
BBC LS5 had that, didn't it?
They did.
Yeah. Well, you might think it might have been a circular drive unit, but it had the straps.
It did, yeah. It had one, I think they put an HF.
It was the early one. The HF13, but the gold version, the GEC version.
Yes, that's right.
The GEC one. It was exactly the same, but
it was, wasn't it?
But it was metal and it was gold. Yeah. Had the little turbine effect on there. Yeah. But it was a GEC driver.
Yeah, I know. I never quite understood that relationship.
No, I know.
Somebody must. Well, they probably all died now.
Well, a friend of mine. He used to work for Philips, and he was tutored when he went to college. He did some degree in whatever, sound engineering, whatever it was. His tutor was the guy who he said invented the HF 1300, and he had one on his desk in like a little presentation thing. Yeah. I'm thinking, well, he did, but the GEC driver was the same, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. So I don't know whether Celestion had the license to do it or make a domestic version.
It looks almost identical.
It does, yeah.
Same size, same mount.
At 13, it was called back because of the hertz it did, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Up to 13K.
13K.
Yeah.
But where did we go?
I don't know. I've gone off on a little tangent again. I do that quite a lot.
Oh, yeah, I know. I do that.
So Tottenham Court Road.
Oh,
yeah.
So we bought those and put them together.
Kit speakers, yeah.
I can't remember what amplifier. I know I had a Garrod SB25, which was the standard turntable you had.
It's in every radiogram.
Sure, M75. Yeah. Anyway,
that would be a soul, wouldn't it?
So I got all that, built it. I was absolutely happy as Larry until I met Tom Barron. Tom Barron, he's worked for me for the last 20 years as our sales manager.
Right.
But we met when we were like 16, 17.
Yeah.
And he had a pair of Wharfdale Dovedales.
Oh.
And I remember going around his house and going, oh no, you know, I thought I had these great speakers, and then I heard those. So that was it really. And then that was my start of a 10 for, you know, changing all my gear.
Wow, yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it, how before you've heard really great gear, you're happy with what you've...
Yeah, because you don't know any better.
So I suppose it's like cars,
yes.
It's like photography.
Yeah.
That, you know, you think, oh, this is really great, and then...
Why do I need any more than this? This is fine. This gets me from A to B. This takes a photograph.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So it kind of accelerated very quickly from being happy with a mono record player with another amp plugged into it to full-blown hi-fi.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, my interest was electronics as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So
is that your background?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I was interested in building amplifiers. I built a lot of very germanium transistors.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Back in the late 60s.
The late 60s, yeah.
And then I left school, and I didn't want to do a degree because I was much more practical.
Right.
So I did a high national certificate at Canterbury, and so you do that as a day release, and then and you work as well. And I quite enjoyed that because I was doing practical stuff during the week and then learning.
Yeah.
And you learned valve. I mean, back then you learned valve technology still. And so
the Mullard there.
Yeah.
Circuits,
Oh yeah.
The 510 and the 5.3.
Yeah. So it was quite a good sort of background, really, all that for me.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And then luckily I got a job with BBC Radio. I was at Canterbury doing my HNC, and they did what they called the milk rounds, which is they go around all university towns and put up a stand and say, come and have a chat with the BBC. So Canterbury's a big
recruitment type thing,
Yeah, so I just popped in for a chat.
The Army one there and the BBC one there.
It was almost like that. And so I went in for an interview, and they said, oh, do you want to come up for a proper one in London? So I went up to that, and by some fluke, got in there.
Rest is history.
The first pair of speakers we ever sold went to the BBC.
Oh yes, I remember you saying.
BB5s. We were very fortunate to have the opportunity to design those speakers for the BBC. I mean, rewinding a little bit, I got very into transmission lines with my hi-fi.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Is your obsessions with?
I've inhaled some. Something. Let me have a sip.
Yeah, have a sip. So where were we?
So Tom Barron, who had introduced me to his Wharfdales, he got a job in a hi-fi and music retailer. In those days, a record shop, a hi-fi shop, and musical instruments and sheet music. They were all one kind of shop. You didn't have. Didn't have. I mean, in London you had separate ones, but in local provincial towns.
Absolutely. Do you remember Sound Sales?
Yeah.
Farnham. They did sound sales amps for the BBC.
Yeah.
They're now Lloyd and Keyworth, and they've been sound sales and Lloyd and Keyworth for the last, Christ knows how many years, 70 years or whatever. And that's exactly what that shop was like. Yeah. It was musical instruments, sheet music, and a bit of hi-fi. Right. And now it's gone completely musical instruments now. Yeah. But it's still in that, still does
they
music
were like
stuff.
that, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
So he got the franchise to sell IMFs, which are transmission line speaker design.
Yeah.
And I remember him ringing me up and saying, you've got to hear these.
Well, these are Fred Fry designs.
No, these are John Wright.
Ah, okay, so...
No, these are the real IMFs.
In the
UK.
Yeah.
And so he brought a pair around to my house. And now, up until then, I'd gone through nearly all the Kefs. Because luckily for me, I got to know the production manager at Kef.
Right.
Through being working in a restaurant with his sister.
Oh, okay.
Weird.
There we go. Well, that's the planets aligning.
I was doing the washing up in the summer holidays at
school.
Like
yeah.
You know, and his sister worked there, and he came in, and so I ended up getting like seconds. So I went through Kef cadenzas, Kef concertos, all good 104s.
Yeah,
in the early 70s, and then Tom said, "Listen to these IMFs," which of course used a lot of
Kef drivers, the 139,
so I didn't get the big ones. I got the TLS 50s, which had a B200 there.
They did. To my ears, I prefer the 50 over the 80.
Yeah,
I just think the 80s is a little bit more unstable in the lower bass.
It can be.
Yeah, the 50s are. I guess it's just simple physics that the boxes are smaller, they're more rigid.
Yeah,
maybe that's to do with it.
Yeah. And so I had to listen to them, and I just couldn't believe how. The funny thing was, it wasn't the bass that was the first thing that I was knocked out by.
No.
It was the imaging.
Yeah.
I just felt the mid was great, and it had a superb image, which I felt was much narrower and not very deep on the old Kevs. So that was it. I bought a pair of those.
Yeah.
And within a year, I came to London with some pals, and we went to KJ Leisure Sound in Wigmore Street, and walked in there. And my holy grail was the big IMFs. They're the B139, not the TS8. The reference monitors. In Formica. In those days they were covered in Formica. Which was
RSPMs.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they had like 20 pairs in there. Wow. Now I think there was 750 quid a pair. That's a lot of money back in the early 70s.
That is a lot of money back in the 70s.
And they were doing them at half price. And there was some story about it was a cancelled export order or something. Anyway, so we cobbled together between me and the pal £37.50 deposit.
Wow.
And I went to the bank manager and to borrow the money, who gave me a real grilling. In those days, you spoke to a real bank manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he,
you want to buy speakers, sir?
Well, exactly. He
not,
said,
not a car or a deposit for a house.
Exactly, it was the cost of a car.
Yeah.
And he said, "You want to spend how much on a pair of speakers?" And I went through it all, and he said, well, "Okay." So I borrowed the money, and I had those for they're in our museum collection now.
You've got the original ones.
Got the original
Oh,
ones.
that's
I never sold them. But I had those for about 10 years. And my business, who was to become my business colleague, Adrian Loader, he got a pair of TS80s, and we had those for, we've been friends for a long time. And then we decided that we were both earning good money. We were, senior managers in respective jobs, and we thought we'll go out and buy the most humdinger pair of speakers. And I think we listened to 20, 30, all the top makes. I mean, I can't even remember which they were, big Meridians and whatever. Yeah. And
the early ones were nice, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, M1s, M2s.
Yeah, I had some in recently. And the crossovers were in the bottom of the case. You pull them out.
They were lovely.
Yeah, nice.
But we thought they were different, but we didn't think they were better. And we thought things should have moved on. So we started a project to develop our own. I mean, I'd done a lot of acoustic work by then at the BBC and with my electronics background as well. Yeah. So we started to develop some speakers for us. But while I was at the BBC, my job turned into looking after loudspeakers for BBC Radio. Commercial commercial designs.
Technician or designer, was it?
No, this was to evaluate them.
Oh, okay.
For BBC Radio. So I would I would go down to Kingswood Warren, we'd listen to various models and then get them in on appraisal. And we went through a lot.
What year was this, sorry?
That would have been the early 80s now.
Okay. Yeah.
And we got lots of models in, but they didn't really cut it. And then I was also looking after Maid of Vale, which is all the music studios. Yeah. And one of the problems they had was they tended to use JBLs and tannoys. Yeah. Because they obviously listened at higher levels. Yes. All the BBC designs couldn't perform at that level. They were much smaller designs. Yeah, yeah. And of course their voice completely different, and that was the difficulty. And what they wanted was a BBC sounding speaker, but went very loud. Right. And we initially had Kef come in, and they designed the KM1, which was a massive, great big 4 12-inch woofers. Yes. Which was probably the first hi-fi sounding loud speaker. So you were involved in the development of the KM1, weren't you? I was as the customer, because I was working at the BBC then. But yes, I didn't tweak them. I didn't get involved in the design work. No, I mean Kev did that, but we fed back what we wanted. I did do some mods to them. Was there a port or something you mentioned? Yes, we added reflex ports. Well, we asked them to add the reflex ports because they were initially sealed cabinets. So one pair. I mean, I was offered one pair about. I think I spoke to you about them about a month ago. I was offered a pair. They didn't look in great condition, but it's the only pair I've ever seen in 15 years of doing this. I think they made about 40 pairs. Yeah, wow. And I think I never did get them. And I think because most of them went to studios, I think they probably just got binned. I think. I mean, I've got a pair. He said they were from Maid of Vale. Oh right, okay. Yeah, they're a black pair. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, but well, you know if they're BBC ones because they'll have ports. If they don't have ports, they'll be the hi-fi version.
I mean, every driver was pushed in. They weren't in very good condition. And I didn't get them in the end, but they were in the pipeline.
They are rare.
I remember calling you and asking you about, what are these, Pete? I had a connection with them, and I've never seen a pair. And,
I know.
But they didn't materialise.
So it was kind of the first stab at doing a really big hi-fi speaker that went loud.
Yeah.
Annoying, I've got this tickle in my throat.
Sorry.
And
some more juice?
No, I've still got some.
Good.
So we had those. The Beat had them for about 5 or 6 years, I suppose.
Yeah.
And they I guess they were okay.
Yeah.
But they failed quite regularly, purely because the levels that was expected of them.
Well, the driver was just giving out, were they?
Yeah, was still greater than what.
Because you got B110s and T27s in there.
Yeah, so double B110s.
Yeah.
A T52, but a double magnet one, ferrofluided.
Was it Dapolito?
Yeah.
He was, yeah.
And four 12-inch.
That's tweeter in the middle and a mid up and down. If you're not familiar with that expression.
Yes. Not many are.
No. Sad people like me and Pete. Anyway, so go on, carry on.
But they were, they sounded great and everything. They were just pushing them.
Yeah.
They were on their limits, I suppose, most of the time.
Oh.
So then there was a requirement to see if we could. So we looked at some other manufacturers, not really successful. So a couple of the engineers who I knew there said, well, I know they knew we were playing around with speakers. I said, why don't you see if you can develop a speaker that we'd be happy with?
Yeah.
So instead of shifting from designing something for our own use, we then went into developing a speaker for BBC Radio.
Yeah.
And we did five prototypes until we got a pair that they were happy with. The procedure at the B, which I think is a lovely design method which we use at PMC, is that the R&D team will design something, they'll put them in a prototype in the studio with a book for all the operators and users to write comments on.
Yes,
and they'll
I've
leave
heard this with the BBC before. Yeah.
And they'll leave them in there for 2 months and fill in, and then at the end of it, they'll take the comments, they'll redesign the prototype, and then do another prototype.
That's good because it gets the actual users involved.
Well, yeah. Do you know what's really good about it as well? It's 50% measurement and 50% listening. It's a good balance. And
that was the BBC's ethos, and that's yours still now?
Still ours, yeah.
Oh,
they
great.
developed that over like 50 years of developing speakers from when they started in the late 20s all the way up to then.
Yeah.
So that's how they'd evolved it, and it really does work.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So we put our speakers in, and the first prototype got sort of really quite nasty comments. The great thing about these guys, they're top of their game. They don't pull any punches, so you know exactly how they feel. So, but then on the 5th version, they all went, these are great, we'd like to buy them. And at that point, I had to leave the B. You cannot work for the BBC and sell to it. Well, you certainly couldn't then. I suspect that may have changed. But back then, there was an honour that it was a licence fee funded operation, and you couldn't be seen to be, benefiting from that.
Okay.
So I left, and then Adrian left it. Adrian worked for a company called FWO Bausch that were a big distributor of professional audio, top end, Studer, Revox, Neumann microphones, EMT turntables. And so he left there, and we formed PMC. But although we've been working together on this speaker for probably 3 years before we started PMC. Yeah.
So the speaker you were talking about for the radio stations, a smaller design. I mean, not like you're talking about the one in Maida Vale was the KM1 big thing, big studio. Were these smaller ones?
We then brought out the LB one, which was we designed the LB one, which was the smallest transmission line ever designed. I think it was more of a thing that I had about people said you couldn't build small transmission lines. I think it came from all the old IMF speakers were all massive, great monsters.
Yeah.
And we built this tiny little transmission line, and it sounded great. And that sort of crossed over into hi-fi then, because
what year was the LB1?
91.
91.
Yeah, right in the first year that we started trading.
Yeah.
The appeal to transmission lines always to me was that they sounded more like electrostatics in terms of the mid-range.
Yeah, and they have a pipe and slippers sort of thing on them, but I don't.
No.
Good when it's done well.
Yeah, well, I think the problem is that the transmission lines got a very bad name at one point in the early 70s because it wasn't quite right. It was a bit woolly, a bit soft, slow.
Yeah.
But of course, there was only 1 or 2 manufacturers doing it. So, you know, people labelled that sound with the type of bass loading, which wasn't true. That was their particular application. It'd be like finding a really bad, say, reflex design and saying all reflexes sound like that. They don't. You know, they're all different. So I think, you know, that was a bit of a problem. But we knew that there was some, you know, there was some really great potential, and that's why when we finished developing our transmission line, we tried to separate it from that by calling it the advanced transmission line, because we put so much more develop into it, solving the issues that they hadn't in the 70s. You know? So you get a much cleaner bottom end. And it's 2 loading principles in one, which is remarkable. Really. It's quite complex.
So the transmission line, I mean, people just think that's for bass. But obviously there is some loading there in the mid. So
there is, if in a 2-way, obviously the bass mid is in the same same cabinet as the which is producing the low end. So yes, it does work for that. The great thing about a transmission line is it absorbs down to a certain frequency, absorbs all the rear radiation into the cabinet, which keeps it clean and low distortion. And then as you go past that frequency, you go lower, then the column of air that's in this big tunnel inside the speaker starts to be used to produce low frequencies. And that's almost doubles the capability of the drive unit. So you can either reduce the size of the cabinet and get the same level and bass, or you can build the same size cabinet and get twice the amount of level and bass, which of course for recording studios, we were after being able to produce high quality bass, and we couldn't see how you could do it. We'd watched what Keff had done with sealed cabinet, didn't work, the reflex struggled, so we needed to come up with a way of producing really high level bass with low distortion, and we felt that, you know, transmission line was the only way you could do it, and it did. It worked, and I mean they're still there. 30 years later, the same pair of speakers.
Are they still there?
At Maida Vale. I mean, they're about to change that because I think Maida Vale is going to be sold and they're going to move to East London. But they've been there 30 years, and how many John Peel sessions have been done on them? How many bands have been recorded on them?
Have you maintained them over the years as well?
Yeah, we go in there.
Are they like Trigger's broom then? How many tweeters and mids have they gone through? I
can't tell because they'll buy hot. I mean, they've got their own engineering department, so we'll sell them hot spares for them to. So I don't know how many they've swapped.
If they do get rid of those, are you going to get them?
Yes, we've asked for them to be part X if they're going to replace them.
I mean they've got to be the ones.
Yeah, I've got the second pair that we bought. We made in the archive, but they would be the best one. They're the first pair that we ever made.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah.
Well, they are working almost a prototype, were they? Or they?
No, they were. No, they were fully formed. There were a pair of prototypes, but they got destroyed. But no, they were the first production pair. Wow. And in those days, we made our own amplifiers. So we went to Huntingdon, went to visit Quad. And we asked them whether we could license their current dumping.
Gonna say the 405,
but the 405 wasn't powerful enough, so they just started on a 606 version. So we used that. So we bridged those to get, I think, 600 watts RMS. I think we got out of them.
Wow,
a pair of them.
Oh, amazing.
So we had 600 watts on the tweeter, 600 on the mid, and 600 watts on each of the woofers. Well, you need, even with the efficiency of the drive units, you still need
for
that
grip, isn't it?
You just for grip, and also you want that headroom, so that when you did turn it up, they weren't, on the end stops, which was the problem in the past. And that, I'll say they're still there. 30
That's
years
cool.
old.
Yeah, that current dumping 405 design. I mean, when did that start? That was really early, wasn't it? It was like late 60s, early 70s, wasn't it?
Yes,
the 303 turned to the 405.
About 72.
70-ish, And that went right up to the 909, didn't it? And I think even their amps today
I think
are pretty much using that current dumping design. And some people say, "Oh, I'm not really keen on the 405," but I think it's a great amp, and it's certainly a good design. I can't say it was one of my favourites, really. No, I mean, it was great. They always sound nice.
It was great at the time. I think what the 405 was, it was a lot of power for the money. And it was I mean, like all quad stuff was built beautifully. And reliable as well. Its Achilles heel was the current protection. It had. In the 70s, all the amplifier manufacturers were sort of obsessed with current, because before direct coupled amplifiers, most amplifiers had a transformer on the output or had a capacitor on the output. So if the amplifier went seriously wrong, it didn't dump DC into your speakers and burn them out.
Yeah, right.
So when the design's changed to direct coupled, which is basically nothing in the way between the output of the transistors on the amplifier and the speaker, if that monumentally failed, it shoved like 50 volts into your speakers DC and melted them.
Yeah.
So all the designers were quite paranoid about that happening. So they put what they felt was necessary, some current protection, which would sort of basically switch the outputs off if you know if they went faulty, or if you drew too much current and caused the amplifier to blow up. Yeah. The trouble was with those circuits was they tended to trigger a bit early. So when you were listening, it would add distortion to okay. So to give you an example, the Quad 405, one of the best modifications you could do, not that I'm telling anyone who's not an engineer to do this, is to go in there with your bolt cutters and cut the current protection circuit out, which was 2 transistors. Yeah. Throw that away, and they sounded great then.
Oh wow! I mean, that design. I mean, the 606 and the 909. It's a refinement on the original one, and I think that it's testimony to that current design that it went for 30 years.
Yes.
You know. So and it sold a lot, didn't it?
Oh, it did. Yeah. Oh, no, it was really ahead of its time. Yeah. But the trouble was, it got embroiled in all the amplifiers sound the same argument that was going around, which was a puzzling one. I remember most of me and my friends at the time were very puzzled by, certain companies, saying that all amplifiers sound the same. We couldn't understand that because we knew they all sounded different. Yeah. Anybody in hi-fi knew they sounded different. But there seemed to be this other group of manufacturers were trying to say that they didn't, and we could never quite grasp that. You just use your ears, Yeah. I think what it was, there was a very big split at the time between, the measurement brigade, the engineering measurement brigade, and the using your ears brigade. And that's what I loved about the Beeb, you see, because when you worked there, you realised that they valued both.
It's a bit of both, yeah.
50-50.
I mean, when you get a measurement, it's a measurement.
Yes.
It's not arguable.
Yes.
But everyone's ears are different.
Yes.
So you could have one guy swearing blind that it was amazing, and if he had more clout than somebody else, then that would be his decision.
It's interesting when we recruit people for our R&D team. We've had people come from electronics background, and it's totally measurement because basically you've only got 2 terminals where you can measure an amplifier on the output to see what it does. With the speaker, where do you measure it? Do you measure it on axis? Do you measure it above, below, at the side? How does it integrate in the room?
Anechoic or actual listening position?
There are so many different ways you can specify that speaker. Yeah. And so it is much more. There's a certain amount of art in it as well as science.
Oh, absolutely.
And the listening is much more important. Whereas people who just develop electronics, not tarring everyone with the same brush, but they tend to be much more measurement orientated.
Yes.
And of course, using our ears is just as important in electronic design as it is with speakers. Yeah. But a lot of people don't, and I think that's why there are a lot of amplifiers that measure wonderful. Oh yeah. But they're pretty boring.
And speakers with a really flat response, but they just sound a bit flat, don't they? Sometimes.
So it's quite a learning curve when people come and work for us to sort of start listening much more than measuring. 50-50, as I say, just not all measurement. And it works, I mean, the other interesting thing that we picked up at the BBC was that most of the speaker's development is using a male speech recording. Right. So rather than starting with music or anything, and the logic behind that is that you and I listen to people talking every day of our life. Right. So our brain is constantly realising what natural speech sounds like. Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether your ears are different or how you're hearing different. How that voice should sound. Yeah, yeah. So if you use a standard recording of a certain voice, then you can use that to tell whether or not your speaker design is right or not. Yeah, yeah. And of course, a voice can catch it out as well. I mean, what you hear, that's the one of the major problems with the voice recording is a boom in the vocal. Yes. That vocal boom thing. Yeah. And a lot of sort of cheaper systems or PA systems especially, they really emphasise that vocal boom, and it's a nice. You have to get that balance between dryness and a bit of warmth in the voice. One of the you're right. Yeah. One of the interesting things when you use speech is you've got all those components, like you've got the chestiness of the voice,
Yep.
But then you've got the S's, you've got the T's,
sibilants and all that.
Yes, you've got all the different. You've got the vowel sounds in the mouth.
Yeah.
And that's all got to lock together. And I know that sounds weird because you think it would do, but if you get the speaker design wrong, you can often, it sounds like the T's are sort of further away than the S's, and the chestiness is in another place. And you know when it's right when they become one from a voice size.
Yeah.
You know, and it's to do with the dispersion, not just the dispersion, but one of the big elements is dispersion, because obviously as I'm speaking to you, you're hearing a reflection off the top of this.
Yeah, I mean the recording would have to be bang on because you'll be hearing the acoustic of the room in it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so your brain is adding up all these reflections.
Yeah. And
deciding whether your voice sounds natural. Now, if the speaker is flat on axis, but off axis it isn't, then the reflections aren't flat as well. So when the brain combines the direct sound with the one bouncing off the wall, it goes, there's something wrong there. And so if you play speech on most speakers, they all sound completely different.
Yes.
And it's the real acid test.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to use as your test piece.
What is your test piece? You've got a few.
Ironically, it's a 1958 recording of BBC Speech.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah. It was a reference recording that was made in a very dead studio room.
Oh.
And I've used that, and we still use that now. I mean, we don't use it completely. We probably about half the design is done in mono with speech.
Yeah.
Then you move to various music extracts.
Yeah.
And then finally we move to stereo, and then. But there's a whole logical process through the development. I mean, every company has a different
way of doing it. Yeah.
But the way that tends to give us a result where we can voice all our speakers the same. One of the biggest acid tests, I think, for any company is if you plug in any of their speakers, and they should all have the same balance.
Yes, they should have the same voicing.
Yeah, and it's rare, I have to say.
Kev nailed it with the early designs.
They did.
They all sound like a Kev.
Yeah, they did.
And it did have that sort of people always say the BBC voicing, don't they? Which is not too much treble, not too much bass, a nice pleasing mid range.
Yeah, they're a bit. Yeah. But you're right. Some companies go over.
Rogers and Spendor. They still have that sound now.
They do.
Other companies are known for being a bit more trebly.
There was a lot of bright speakers.
Well, that came from the demonstration rooms in hi-fi shops where someone who wasn't really an audiophile would listen to a pair of speakers and then hear another pair of speakers that were brighter.
Yeah.
And they would say, "Oh, they sound clearer," and they would confuse clarity with top end performance.
Exactly, and that's the danger of designing.
Yeah, treble is not clarity. It's because it's more treble or it's brighter. That's not clarity.
No, exactly.
But on an AB, the customer would pick the brighter ones, and then they get them in their house and get annoyed after a few hours, and their ears will start bleeding.
Well, that's the problem. You get fatigued by the sound.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's one of the problems of designing a speaker without having measurements as well as listening. Because if you do it purely by ear, you'll go towards the loudness curve, boost the bass, boost the top end.
Yes.
Because it sounds better.
Yes, it does in the short term, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the good thing, the test for that is, and I've been there before now, where I've spent all day designing a speaker.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I thought, that's marvellous. I'm not going to beat that.
Yeah.
And in the morning, I go in and I go, what on earth was I thinking? Because your ears keep adjusting.
Mood is the same. So you have absolutely that. So, Pete, your vintage collection. Now, it's stuff of legend, isn't it, in the audio community?
I don't know about that.
Well, people talk about Pete's collection. So PMC have a collection or an archive of notable designs, mainly transmission line.
It started with that.
Okay.
It was to have a history.
It's gone out of control now, is it?
It's got out of control, as always.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a bit of an addictive person.
Got some for you later, as you know.
Thank you, yes,
Yeah.
And feed my habit.
yeah, you like those.
It was to get just a history of transmission lines.
Yeah.
And so we started collecting those, and then of course people would say, when I find I'll give you an example. I went to somebody's house. They had a pair of really early IMF transmission lines. I mean, probably the first year they were 69. And I went there and
IMFs.
IMFs.
With the split baffle, the ones. The split baffle.
No, these are the big. These are the big ones, the big reference ones.
Oh, the RSPMs.
They were
Mark ones.
Mark ones.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
And in beautiful condition, all working. And this chap was about 85. He'd had them from new, and he bought them in '69. And I was just about to leave, and he said, "Are you interested in any other hi-fi?" And I went, "Well, you know, as you do. What else have you got?" He said, "Oh, I've got a very nice turntable." So I went up there, and he had an original transcriptors, the early one with the round feet and the unipivot. And an ADC 26 cartridge, which are nice and rare. And so I had that because I thought I can't let that go. And then I think people heard that we had other stuff, and slowly it became tape. Well, I had lots of tape machines already because I'm a big tape collector as well. Yeah. So I had a lot of tape
reel
machines.
to reels.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's grown into we've got L cassette players.
Oh, have you?
Amazing. 8 tracks.
DCC.
I mean, all the pun.
DCC.
No, I'm not a DCC. No. But yeah, there's a lot of it expanded. Yeah. And so there's there's everything really. Turntables, amplifiers, tape machines. Everything, cartridges. So it sort of snowballed a bit. We've catalogued it all now in the last couple of years, and we've just got to decide what the limits are of what we're going to keep.
Does it have its own warehouse?
Yeah, it does. We've got a huge, big sort of like barn building at Home Court, and it's full at the moment. And it's getting to be a problem because it's taking up so much room.
Is it purely a collection, or do you reference it?
We do reference it. Yeah, the R&D guys will take stuff out of the archive
and go, well, we know they're good. Let's have a re-listen to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some very, some very interesting ideas in the past that have gone. I mean, here's a speaker one which is interesting.
Go on.
And you'll probably know it because you've probably had them through. Is a lot of early BBC designs had a slot in front of the bass and mid-range unit. So instead of seeing the whole drive unit, all you could see is like a slot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is quite an interesting technique because what it does, it changes the dispersion of the speaker. Right. So it makes the speaker look smaller. So, and that's a good thing with dispersion. So you get wider dispersion. That's the positive. Yeah. The negative is of course, that because you've got a big piece of wood in front of the speaker, the sound can ricochet off the face.
Yes, right.
But certain designs manage to, optimize that, and that's quite an interesting technique. It's gone. I'm not saying that we'll ever use it, but we've looked at it. It's quite interesting. So there are a lot of little gems in the past that you look at.
There's another a wacky speaker, the Griffin.
Yes.
It used to have a bouncy stand. Remember that?
Yes.
I sold you a pair.
You did.
A while ago.
Yeah.
Where have they been restored yet?
No. Sadly, there were no drive units. So.
No, I nicked those because there was value in the mid-range.
Yeah, so
I didn't know you wanted them, and then
I know.
I said, "Oh, I've got these cabinets, Pete. You want these?" Oh, well, I have nicked the drive units, but you did take the cabinets.
What I'm hoping to do is find another pair that are probably a bit battered. Yeah. Because one of the problems with any archive is trying to find really great condition.
Exactly. The cabinets were nice, weren't they?
Yeah, they were immaculate.
Yeah. They had a sort of bent, almost spring-like stand.
Yes.
That was designed to rock.
They did, yes.
And you think that goes against everything, using spikes to pin them to the floor, making them sturdy.
Yeah, it worked okay.
But they bounced around.
Of course, that's come back now because you've got bouncy stands now, haven't you?
Oh, Max Townsend stuff and all that.
Yeah.
Bless him. Rest in peace, Max.
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah.
So, nothing new.
I never use spikes.
Nothing new under the sun.
I never use spikes in here. No. Only because they're a pain to move about.
Yeah, but if you're doing demos.
And I stuck one through a kneecap once.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
That wasn't good. I had a day off work. It was when I was doing hi-fi and cooking at chefing.
Nasty.
I had to have a day. I had to bring up the head chef and say, I can't come in. I've done my kneecapping. How have you done that? Well, I dropped a Partington Dreadnought with a spike on into my knee. I stumbled. It went straight into my kneecap. And that was a bit nippy for a bit. So I had to have a day off. But damaging myself with a Partington Dreadnought.
That sounds...
Hi-fi related injuries is probably another topic we could go into.
But you see, all I'm saying is that there are a lot of things in the past that come back.
Yeah, and you forget about them. You've actually got that huge reference.
It's like all cabinet designs. Most of the variants have been done by the 1930s.
Yeah.
You know, soon as a moving coil speaker was developed, everyone started looking on how to load that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they weren't refined, and obviously the following 60 years, 70 years refined it, but the ideas were there.
What about the void pipe? It hasn't come back really.
Yeah.
Or it has sort of. There's the odd design, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a pair of homemade ones that someone gave me.
Yeah.
They're 6'6" or something.
Yeah.
We went down to the Halfords and bought some JBL 4 ranges.
Yeah.
Stuck them in these cabinets. They sounded amazing.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how good that cabinet worked.
But it's a form of transmission line,
Yeah.
stroke quarter wavelength.
It didn't have a
Yeah.
letterbox port. It
No.
had a tunable port.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could actually tune it, the port length, to whatever speaker you chucked into it.
Nice.
So it works quite well. And
Yeah.
that would be an interesting one because a lot of people haven't heard them.
No.
Have you got any in your collection?
No.
No. Sure,
I've got some column Wolfdales from the 50s.
Was that the one where they gave you you had to buy the driver and the plans?
Right.
You had to go down to your local
So,
DIY place and buy a concrete pipe.
no, it wasn't those.
Wasn't
No,
those?
There are those. But
There are those, yeah.
No, this is a complete timber cabinet.
Oh,
with
excellent.
a one driver in it,
Wow.
facing up.
Yeah, facing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a form of quarter wavelength stroke transmission line.
Quarter wave, is it?
Quarter wave, yeah.
Yeah. What's your favourite? That's probably a silly question because you probably couldn't narrow it down. But what are your few favourite items you've got? What's your favourite sort of few bits?
The Gale turntable.
Yeah.
I love that. GS 101, is it? I can't
Who owned that one?
Billy Connolly.
Billy Connolly. Yeah, there we go. But you're not allowed to say.
No. Fantastic turntable. I mean, that's so ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It had various speed, electronic control, a digital readout of the speed.
I know.
Beautiful looking. Yeah, I mean.
How many did they make? 100 was it?
No, I think about 50.
50.
Yeah.
Did I told you about the one we had? We had a prototype.
Yeah.
I think you saw a picture, didn't you?
No, I don't think
Oh,
so.
we had one that was belt drive.
Yeah.
And it looked just like a Gale. And we got it. We're given it by a lady who was stopping the next door neighbour's family throwing all his possessions out.
Wow.
And it was in a skip.
Wow.
He owned a fabrication company,
Yes.
Perspex fabrication company. He was asked to make a turntable to this design. A few basically working prototypes, and we had this turntable, and to all intents and purposes, it's a Gale 301.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was belt drive and everything else, and it is in our archives on our website.
Wow.
It's in a collection somewhere. It had 2 arm boards as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting
That is
thing.
interesting.
And it was a 50% thicker in all of the acrylic than the Gale is.
Oh,
So the platter was over an inch thick.
Yeah.
It had strobe inside as well.
Yeah.
Strobe markings.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it came with an old Michel hydraulic reference, which sort of dated it.
Ah,
So it would have been mid 60s.
yeah.
So when did the Gale come out?
75.
Was it 75?
74, 5.
Oh, okay.
It was. I mean,
The arm could have been an older
Yeah.
arm, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it was early. It was earlier than the Gale came out onto the
Yeah.
market.
Because
Yeah.
I've always been drawn to those kind of sort of skeleton looking
Yeah.
turntables.
The IMF turntable.
I mean, the IMF turntable.
I have one of those.
Great. Yeah,
I have one of those.
I think that'd be my second favourite out of
It's
that
a
collection.
bit of kit, isn't it?
It's a nice turntable.
Yeah.
And again, electronic control, which is quite advanced for the time.
Yeah. Parsfield, which is about 3 miles away from here. One of the guys involved in the IMF UK. I don't know who it was. It's one of the two. There's two, wasn't there? But business partners who were the
There
early
was,
IMF.
Yes. Yeah, well,
One of
three
those
directors,
used to live in Parsfield and
really?
gave the stuff to his grandson.
yeah.
So we had a pair of original IMFs that were knackered. They were in a barn and they were gone.
Shame.
But the box turned up with the IMF turntable in,
Wow.
which is pretty cool.
Oh,
So
that's
we
good.
sold that a long time ago for £1,700.
Wow. Yeah, they fetch a lot now.
I know, and David Price used the images quite a lot. He was quite into it, so he had that on his website for a little bit, and there was a bit of discussion about it.
Yeah, they're nice.
Very, and it was lovely as well. Really, really good condition. Again, that's on the archive somewhere. Yeah. So what other bits?
So they're probably my favourite turntables.
Yeah.
Amplifiers.
Yeah.
I think just purely from a look point of view, gotta be the Lexan AP1, AC1.
Yeah, they're great, aren't
the
they?
cylindrical power amp.
Pre-Meridian design, Boothroyd, Stuart.
Yeah, Boothroyd.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I still think that the RAA stage in that Lexan is the best movie magnet.
Yeah.
RAA stage. It sounds wonderful.
Brilliant, yeah. and was used traditionally with the Gale stuff, wasn't it?
It was.
It was.
Yeah.
It was the system 401s chrome ended.
The 401 chrome speakers is my favourite.
Yeah, but as a design thing,
yeah,
you know that sort of slidey, multicoloured sliders.
Yeah.
You know, with this trademark, almost Meridian trademark pinstriping.
Yeah.
You know, that pair of Gales with the chrome on and that turntable.
Yeah.
Would have been amazing. I mean, Elton John, I believe, had that system.
Yeah, the original, he had the transcriptors before that.
Did he?
Yeah.
I know he had a Gale.
Yeah, he definitely had the Gale.
Yeah, and the speakers. Yeah. And I think Frank Sinatra did as well. I don't know if he had the Lectons, but he definitely had the Gales and the Gales as well.
Certainly the most sexy looking hi-fi.
Awesome looking stuff.
And it performed. I mean, the Gale 401s. I mean, I'm not a big fan of sealed speakers.
No, they were good though, weren't they?
They were exceptional.
Yeah, and you pay in the bum to restore.
Yeah, they are.
Because you've got 3 drivers in each cabinet that need doing.
Yeah, they're all the surrounds.
Yeah, and you have to get a table leg and a mallet to get the ends off.
I know, you really have to hammer that.
Yeah, and there's about 500 million staples.
Staples.
And then the crossovers fail quite a bit, and the switches are rubbish.
Well, it's got those variable.
Yeah, they're terrible. So when I first started, I used to restore them.
Yeah.
But I'd lose my life.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't do this. Yeah. This is ridiculous. The amount of time, so we don't.
But when they work,
when they're done, they're amazing.
They're really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most. And of course, at the time, they were poo-pooed a bit, the Gale 401s, because they were chrome and a bit blingy. Yeah. That it was almost.
They did a wood version.
Yeah, they did do a wood version, but the chrome. Yeah, the funny thing is, I always thought the chrome one sounded better. Don't ask me why. Maybe it was just the visuals, but anyway. Yeah. I think a lot of people didn't like the chrome 401 because of the look of them, and they thought that they must have put all the money into how it looks, although they were very expensive, rather than the audio. But I mean, forget the looks. The audio quality of them was excellent.
No, they are very, very good. And when we do get a restore pair in, we always put them in and go, oh yeah, they're quality, those.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, they're my favorite. I mean, the trouble is, you know, I say they're my pop. I mean, I've got parallel systems that I could equally say that are my favourites. For technology, amplifier wise, the amplifier that I really go for is the Harrison S200, which is a rare.
Had one in about 3 months ago, Harrison. Rare
amplifier, and they did a matching tuner, which is
super rare, isn't it?
Very rare,
mega rare.
And the quality of the amplifiers in those.
The Lexan tuner as well. I'm on tuners.
The Lexan tuner's rare.
They made 20. I was told they made 26.
Really?
And then I got number 27 in. So now they made 27. We I think it went for about £1,200 just for the tuner.
Easily,
Yeah. So as we know, I think there's 27. They're going to correct me on there, aren't they?
They're a nice design. They look beautiful together with the preamp and
they do. The reliability on the AP1 and the AP2. Is it the P2 and P3 the amps? Is it? I've got
the AC.
Power amps.
I know it's weird. The preamp
P1,
AC. Yeah. It's C for controller. I think. And it's the AP one, isn't it?
The amplifiers are very unreliable.
They were. They used to catch fire.
Yeah, and you very rarely ever get a working one. I very rarely ever get a working one. Yeah. But when I do get them working, they are quite nice.
Yeah, a lot of amplifiers around there seem to turn into very high frequency oscillators.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of super tweeters are melted, because they just take them out.
You would think with the cylindrical upright heat sinking, it would actually go out.
Oh, it's great heat sink.
Yeah.
I think the circuit was a little unstable.
Oh, is that what it was? Yeah.
But then a lot of amplifiers then were.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, especially big power amps, you know, that's why most people built 15 watt, 20 watt amplifiers.
Yeah.
You know, but if you got above 30, 40 watts, a lot of them were, you know, a little bit unstable.
A bit more reliability.
They were. Well, most of the semiconductors weren't, you know, power outputs weren't available. And there was suddenly that burst of power amplifier. I mean, up until about 71.2, most amplifiers, the threshold was like a quad 303, which is what, 45 watts a channel. Yeah. And then suddenly a whole selection of semiconductor power chip transistors came out that you could do 100 watts a channel.
Right. Yeah.
And it was at that time, of course, that the Quad LS35A was designed, and that's why it was so clever.
Rogers.
Well, the BBC design.
Oh.
I mean, Rogers had the license.
Yeah.
The BBC designed the LS35A.
Yeah.
And what was clever about Harwood when he designed that was he realised that because you had all this power now, that you could make the speaker less efficient and tilt the bass unit. What he did, he brought the efficiency of the upper frequencies down, so it made it sound like the bass was fuller than it really was.
Yes.
But you could only do that once you started getting amplifiers that had high power levels. Before that, you couldn't have done it. So it was a right time, right place design. You took advantage of the bigger power amps, even though the speaker was quite inefficient.
Yeah.
And you often see that there's often certain things you can do at certain times in history because other things have happened, and you couldn't have done them earlier because all the pieces of the puzzle weren't available to you as a designer. Yeah,
they were trying to get back the LS35A. They were basically for mainly speech and broadcast fans, weren't they?
They were an OB design outside broadcast.
You would never know you'd get that level of bass response out of a single B110.
No,
but they are really good. I mean, there is a video about the development of the LS35A Kingswood Warren.
Yeah.
All that we did in the other room when it was a retro room. It's not anymore; it's a workshop.
Yeah.
But that's online with Andy Whittle, who was a manager at Rogers for a bit. There's a bit of history on that. Yeah.
But Rogers didn't design it.
No.
BBC.
Kingswood Warren load. I mean, the amount of money they spent developing that speaker.
They did.
Couldn't do it now.
No, I mean that's the other thing the BBC were lucky with, in the sense they weren't commercial, so they could explore things that you as a manufacturer could never do. And then if you built it the way that the original LS35A was made, the cost of replicating that, people wouldn't pay that amount. Although they've brought out some new ones now, haven't they? That people are charging thousands and people are buying them. So.
Yeah. Rogers is back.
Yeah.
Andy Whittle is back at the helm of Rogers. And he's building them again, and they're great.
I thought it was a Chinese company.
It's owned by a Chinese company, but now making everything in the UK now.
Right.
So Andy is literally building them by hand.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful. We had them in here for a bit of voicing.
Yeah.
In this room actually, we had the first pair of the new batch in, and we were discussing voicing and having a little listen.
Yeah.
It's nice. He trusts my ears a bit, so that's all right.
Yes, I've got sort of long memories of doing those listening tests at Kingswood Warren, because they would have the reference pair, and then Rogers or whoever it was who was making them would bring in like 100 pairs.
Were you there at that famous one that got the magazine cover where there was 7 types of LS35A and 7 different?
No, it's before that.
Oh yeah, Andy was one of the guys in that panel.
I can't remember.
There was 7 people from the audio industry and 7 different versions, I think, that were tested. I might be getting these facts wrong, but I remember.
That must be afterwards, because I mean, all.
No, it was for the magazines, and it was in the 80s. Yeah, it was after their design. Everyone had been selling them for a while, so all the
it must have been, well,
they just decided to get them together.
Yes.
The Spendor, the Kefs, the Audio Masters, the Rams.
Yeah, there were lots of different.
And put them all together and have a listen. Yeah. And Chartwell's obviously.
Yeah, they were all there, weren't they?
Yeah.
Well, they licensed them to a lot of companies.
It was 7 or 8, wasn't it? I think. Yeah. There's a few rare ones.
I got more involved at the end of the original design when there was a lot of problems with the B110.
Yes.
They were becoming very variable.
They changed the suspension as well, didn't they?
Yeah. The Beck stream was a big problem.
Yeah.
It varied in thickness and damping.
Yeah.
So in the end, they with Kef they redesigned it with the polypropylene base unit.
Yeah.
Which solved the problem, but I always felt that it didn't quite have the sound.
People desire the early serial number ones.
The original ones.
They call it the white belly drives only because the glue had gone white over the years.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that originally.
Yeah.
People call them the white bellies just because it's visually distinguishable from the later ones.
After a while.
They had the thick rubber surrounds, didn't they?
That's right. But I think they sounded the best.
Yeah.
And I do like the Rogers versions
as
well.
Yeah.
But
proper collectible item now. Have you got some early ones?
I have, yeah.
Mega money now, aren't they?
They are. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, we sold a pair for 17,000 a few years ago.
Wow.
Pair number 17.
Good God.
So it was number 34, number 35.
That's mad.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, it's like wow,
I mean, for me, I'm just puzzled with their continued popularity. Really, I mean, it's a nice speaker, but it's
it's mainly the Asian markets.
But it's a vintage,
It's a collectible.
It's a collectible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of people in the UK think it sounds amazing for what it is, which I have trouble with. I mean, it's all
I
right.
like them for a mini monitor.
I mean, it's all right.
Yeah.
But it's it is 45 years old.
It's been improved on
That'd
since.
be like me getting into a Morris Marina and saying I really like the handling of this.
Yeah, and also the ones you're hearing are 45 years old.
Well,
it's not just the design.
Yeah.
The materials are 45 years old
Exactly.
as well. And the newer ones, they do. They definitely sound like an LS358, but they are they're a modern speaker, and they're very nice. Yeah. So your home systems, have you got more than one? Yeah. What do you run at home?
I've got Finestras in my stereo room.
Yeah.
And I pair that with Bryston's.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we are the distributor of Bryston's.
Yes.
I do love their power amps.
Yeah.
They've just got a fantastic bottom end, and the latest Cube one's got lovely, beautiful imaging on them.
Yeah.
And I've got several turntables. I've just got a Verter turntable from Tourage, which is stunning.
Yeah.
But then I've got a Garrard 401 for my 78s.
Nice.
With an SME and lots of styli, different size
styli.
styli.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then I've got another turntable I use for my 45s. If I've got some that are a bit manky, so I don't really want to play them on the main turntable.
No.
So yeah, and a couple of tape machines. Mainly I've got a Studer and a Reeboks that I use for tape. So
yeah,
that's my sort of stereo room.
Yeah.
And then I've got a sort of home theatre-y kind of room, which I've got active MB2s in, and they're powered by Bryston as well.
Yeah.
But that's just the source material of that is mainly Blu-ray and satellite.
It's good that you're in the industry and you still love what you do. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't do much hi-fi at home. I've hardly got anything.
No.
Got some eminent technology at FT8B hybrids on the telly.
Yeah.
And I am guilty of not really playing much music at home because I do it every day here.
Yeah.
Play with so much stuff. I don't want to go home and do it. But it's nice that you do that.
I don't know. I suppose I just like fiddling about with stuff. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, my hi-fi is always in pieces because I'm always trying something new or plugging something out. I mean, like yesterday I was copying some reel-to-reel tapes and realised I hadn't quite got it how I wanted, so I had to rip it all apart again and plug it up. And I just enjoy,
Oh, excellent.
fucking about. The only thing you're starting to realise now, of course, with a lot of archive gear, is that a lot of the components are failing.
Yeah.
Through age.
Yeah.
There's a lot of restoration that needs to be
I
done.
know.
And also the glues and the lubricants are, drying
Ferrofluids.
out.
That's a bane, isn't it?
So there is quite a lot of support work for archive gear to keep it running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you want a high failure rate, which of course you don't want.
Well, you don't want exactly.
There's that's a whole side of it. And I think if when we get this museum going, because the whole point of the archive collection is so that we can start to show it to people.
Oh, okay.
And we want to be able to, whether or not we open it up to the public, that would be the ultimate.
You would want to do that, would you?
Yeah, I mean, initially I think we were just going to open it up for our dealers and distributors, people in the industry.
Can I come
and see it? Yeah, of course.
I'd love to see it.
Of course.
To be fair, you have invited me up a few times, but life's got in the way, and I will make an effort.
The problem is it's all in boxes. There's only a few items.
You made an effort. You've come down here twice because the first failed recording.
There's a lot of work to do with it, but if we can get it to that point, and then we'll see. I mean, we may even turn it into, if we can get charitable status, we might be able to get some money to do it as well.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, it's not our mainstream business, but
no.
I think to try and engage people in audio, this would be one way.
Would you have virtual? Would you have rooms? Would you have set up with music playing and things?
Yeah. Well, we talked about having like a 50s room, a 60s room. So, and just to have a classic working system.
You never saw the 70s room, did you?
No.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
And just if you could have one system working, then you can have shelves with the other stuff on. But I think people want to hear what they could have heard in those decades.
Right. So this is always it's an interesting. It was a very good, interesting question last time, and we had a really good answer, which I really want to hear again. It's the Stevie Wonder story. So the question is, standout moments in your career with PMC.
What
apart from the Stevie Wonder story, we'll do that in a minute. Go on.
I think probably standing in front of a pair of our speakers.
Yeah.
With a chap called T-Bone Burnett, who's a record producer, standing on my left.
Okay.
And Elton John's standing on my right, listening to his new album.
Amazing, because you are an Elton John collector, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
You got a lot of. You haven't actually got Elton John, but most of the stuff.
I've got him in a box.
You let him out at weekends. Yeah, let him out for charity events.
Yeah, this last couple of years have been quite busy with. I've been helping them with doing all the 50th anniversary albums. I mean, all of Elton John's classic albums were in the early 70s.
Yes.
And they're just doing all the 50th anniversary editions. And I've got a lot of material on tape that they don't have in their archives. So I've been helping them with those, which has been great fun.
Wow.
Unearthing early material, and it's been quite nice fun, that. And I've got PMC a credit on the album, so that's
have you?
Yeah,
amazing.
So that was good. So that's been a lovely thing. I mean, that's not hard work. That's just fun.
Oh right, excellent.
But yeah,
he's got them at home, hasn't he, as well, Elton?
He has, yeah, quite a lot of big artists. I think what happens is they often record their album. You know, with PMCs in the studio.
So they spend a lot of time with them and go.
They do, and they think, well, why shouldn't I have them at home? I mean, people like Brian May and Robbie Williams, people like that. They've,
Brian May's local, isn't he?
Yeah. So there's quite a few artists. I think they get used to the studio product and they want it at home, which is a nice connection. Really.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And if they allow us to use their name in advertising, so much the better. Not always. I mean, Brian May did a great advert for us years ago. Yeah. But then others, they have, for legal reasons, they can't.
Did Robbie do some as well?
Robbie Williams did a great advert for us, holding one of our mugs.
As seen here.
Yeah. No, he's really, I mean, we've had some really good relationships with those people.
Yeah.
And they've done it for nothing. They haven't done it for money. Just because they like
it. Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
So there was another famous artist that uses PMC speakers.
Stevie Wonder.
Yeah. I love this story. Pete's told me this in the past, and again on the failed recording, he recounted this amazing story. But so here we go again. So sorry I had to ask you to tell me it again.
No, that's
but
fine.
It's brilliant every time I hear it.
Yeah.
So tell us what happened there with Stevie Wonder.
So I was at work.
Yeah.
In the office, and one of the girls in the main office rang through and she said, "Oh, I've got a phone call for you." Yeah. She said, "It's Stevie Wonder," and I don't know why, but it hadn't.
Did she think it was a wind up originally?
No, I don't know, but I did. Yeah. But I don't think she'd actually, she just passed the message on. I hadn't really thought about the name.
Yeah.
For some reason, anyway. So I went to pick this phone up, thinking, I wonder who the Joker is on the other end.
Yeah.
And of course, as soon as he spoke, I went, it's definitely Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
And he was over in the UK. I think he was getting an Ivor Novello Award. And he said, I've been after a pair of your AML1 speakers. These are a little active speaker we made at the time.
Yeah.
Quite high end. And he said, I've been after a pair of these. And he said, I wonder whether I could buy a pair while I'm having the US. Of course,
Yeah.
I said, when would you like them? He said, well, now. So it was about 5 o'clock on a Friday. Yeah, it was the end of the day on a Friday.
Wow.
And so he told me he was in this hotel in London, just off Hyde Park. And so I got in the car, threw a pair of speakers in, went down there, and to be honest, all I expected to do was drop them off.
Yes.
And
to his people. To his people.
Yeah, to his people, to his manager or whatever. So I turned up and I said, I've got these for Stevie Wonder. And the guy said, who? There's no Stevie Wonder here. And I said, no, there is. I said, Stevie. And then I suddenly remembered that he told me I had to use a certain password, so I said it, and they went, oh, right.
You remember the password?
I did remember. Oh, no, I can't remember what it was. It was something silly,
Yeah.
So anyway, his manager comes down, and so I give him the speech. And he said, oh, no, Stevie would like to have a chat with you. He said, come up to his suite. So I went up to his suite and sat me down, and we had a great conversation about, speakers and audio and everything. And then a girl came in and started doing his makeup and everything.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, you doing a concert or something? Oh, he said, I'm doing a concert. Would you like to come to the concert? So I said, yeah, great. Now, again, when an artist says, usually the manager gives you a couple of tickets, and it's at the, one of the seats in the O2 somewhere or wherever he's playing, and that's the end of it. And he said, oh, you can come with us. So I get in the car.
Were you a big Stevie Wonder fan before?
Yeah, love him.
So this must have been a lot to take in.
It was like pinching myself at this point.
Is this happening?
So it was like that. So we got in the car and we go and we end up at the Natural History Museum. So I'm thinking, what the hell are we doing? It turns out he's doing a private concert for the Deutsche Bank.
Wow.
Probably only about 500 or 600 people, I would think. And it was in the big hall where the big dinosaur used to be.
Yeah.
And they got a stage put up at one end. And he was doing a solo concert, just him and keyboards, nobody else, to the Deutsche Bank. So I go in. I mean, as I'm walking in, there's all these people all lining up on the entrance to the Natural History Museum. And I'm sure they're all going, who the hell's that with Stevie Wonder?
It's a roadie.
Yeah, that's right. Well, exactly, with me and my hair. And so we go in there, and I'm expecting to sort of just be peeled off somewhere. And he said, oh, no, come into my dressing room. So I go in his dressing room, and he's sitting there setting up his harmonica and having a chat. I mean, he's such a nice man. And so we're having all this chat, and then there was a balcony that overlooked the stage. So, you want to go? You know, my manager will take you up. There's a balcony up there where you can, see me. And so I went up there, and there was 3 or 4 other his friends that he had there, and we all sort of sat up there and watched. Yeah. And at the end of the show, he invited us down to his dressing room, and they had a meal for him. So, and I had a meal with him in the dressing room, and then we were driven back to the hotel to pick up my car. And when I got home, told Jo, my wife, she said, "Sure, you haven't dreamt this." She said, it just sounds unbelievable.
I break down, Peter.
Yeah, that's right. And it was because it was so unexpected. It wasn't something that it just all sort of happened as it unravelled. But a very, very nice man. What was lovely, he invited me to a studio in Los Angeles called Wonderland.
Wonderland, yeah.
And he bought the previous year our big BB5 reference monitors to remix and remaster all his albums on. Which he just got halfway through. Yeah. So we went there, and he's so interested in audio, I can't tell you. And he's so interested in history of musical instruments. He's got all of his synthesizers he's had since the 60s, all those massive great Moog synthesizers, ARP, amazing. And so it's amazing. He can't see, but he walked round and he was showing us and telling us all this stuff as if he was fully sighted. It's quite incredible. Yeah. I presume he knows where everything is in his studio. Yeah. And then we went into the studio, and he said, "Do you want to hear? Let me play you a track. What's your favourite track?" So I chose a track of Talking Book and played it, and he sang it next to me while
you keep that together,
and you're just it's just fantastic.
Oh wow!
You can't sort of write that stuff, can you? I mean, it's just
so Wonderland uses PMC speakers.
They do, yeah. They still do, yeah.
That's great, isn't it?
In fact, it's a shame the NAMM. There's a exhibition in America called NAMM, which is a professional.
I've seen the YouTube videos of that.
And we're always there, and I didn't go this year, and Stevie came to the stand.
Oh, did he?
To see us, so that was nice. But yeah, he's still using them.
That's amazing.
But he's it's very unusual for an artist to be that open, I think. He obviously is very much more hands-on than a lot. Although he's got his team of managers and everything, he obviously likes to deal one-to-one personally. Yeah. So I quite like that. But just a very, very kind man,
I mean, that's a money can't buy experience. I mean, that's incredible.
It is, And I mean, there aren't many artists that I would really bend over to really go and see and everything. He's certainly up there with the top 2 or 3 that I'd want to see. Amazing. That would have been well, you can't really top that, can you? No, well, I don't know. No, I don't think so. I mean, I quite liked seeing Elton. That was a good day, but that was quite different. It was the release of his out. They finished the recording, and this was a special sort of event. It was for about 100 invited people. Right. Where the record company comes and they launch the album that he was doing, the Union with Leon Russell. They did a joint album. Yeah. And I met Leon Russell. He was there as well. But it was very much a launch with a record company. So it's not formal, but there was a certain tension in the whole. Yeah. So I couldn't really it would have been lovely if I could have had a conversation with him, but the opportunity really didn't arise. It was very much a business thing. Right. And that sometimes happens, Yeah. I mean, we put in some MB2s into Brian May's house, and that was an adventure.
This is one where the acoustics was just you couldn't get it. It wouldn't gel.
He had a billiard room.
Oh yeah,
with a semicircular ceiling.
Yeah.
And he built a recording studio, a lovely big mixing desk, and we put up a pair of our big monitors at the end, and you just couldn't get any bass in this room. And
that's unusual for PMC stuff.
It was, we couldn't believe it. So in the end, because they're active, you can equalise the bass.
Yeah.
You can change things. So we almost turned up to full bass, and we turned it right up, and you still couldn't hear any bass in this room. And his manager came running up the stairs. He said,
"Low frequency suck out in the room somewhere."
It was a real, So his manager came running up the stairs and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, the house is falling apart downstairs." So we left it running, went downstairs. All the bass was downstairs.
Wow.
And the house was shaking. Because, I mean, obviously we're renowned for producing high-level bass.
Yeah.
And just this semicircular ceiling was actually...
These are the big sort of volt driver ones?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, double cabs.
Wow, yeah.
So anyway, we found out that we used 2 subs in the end, firing from other side of the room.
Yeah.
And then all the bass disappeared in the house, and we kept it in the room.
Oh, excellent.
But it took about 5 hours to
work it out.
It was very strange.
Mm. No rooms are the same, are they?
No, but Brian May was very happy when it was finished.
Was he? Yeah. Still running that system now, is he?
I believe so.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, he's still there. So yeah, he was a very good client, and he did a lovely advert for us.
Oh, that's nice.
Really, really nice advert for us.
Oh, good stuff.
So yeah, another good chap.
Yeah.
I think most of them are really. You hear horror stories about people, but I mean, all you got to remember is a lot of these artists they're at the top of their game because they're perfectionists.
Yes.
And they expect high standards from everyone.
Yeah.
And if you aren't one of those kind of people, you may well find it a bit tough.
Yeah.
But if you're on that wavelength and I totally get that they want the best.
Yeah.
Then
you're in the same mindset.
You are,
yeah,
and you're fine. I really believe that. We have had some nightmare people, but you have in every walk of life, don't you? So we had some adventures.
That's a nice story, and that was good because that wasn't in the last recording we did.
No,
we said that off mic.
Oh, we did.
We did, and I said, "Oh, you should have put that in. That would have been great." But so we got it this time, so that's really, really good.
No, we've had some nice stories and nice relationships with customers. And it is nice to be, for a company, it really grounds you when you are producing equipment that the recording's made with, and you know what it should sound like.
Yeah. So
that when you then design something for the home, you've got that connection. So you're trying to replicate what it sounded like in the studio as close as possible. And because we're involved with both ends, that's a really strong driver in our company to make sure that, I mean, we've still got a long way to go. If anybody who tells you everything's sorted, all you got to do is go into a recording studio and hear a drum kit, then go and hear it on a pair of speakers, and I can tell you now, there is no speaker in the world, even now, that can do what a drum kit does. Yeah. Not yet.
It's all the resonance of being produced, reacting with the surroundings, and it's just a lot of information.
It's dynamic range.
Dynamic range, yeah.
The peaks are so high and so short that your speakers have real trouble doing. Well, that's why when you record it, I mean, we used to do, and we'll probably do some more. Take a few of our dealers around to recording studios so they can. Yeah. The funny thing is about our industry, it's very separate from the hi-fi industry. Is very separate from the professional.
Oh,
industry.
It's 2 different things. I don't purchase studio or PA equipment.
No.
Just do home audio, it's totally different.
I know, and and although we've got a foot in both camps.
Yeah, not many companies have they?
No, it's a very and of course all the words that are used to describe audio are different. It's a whole different vocabulary. And quite a different, and what's great is you learn good things from both sides, And interesting, both industries seem to have quite a sort of, a sort of negative view of each other as well.
But they couldn't be any more closely related.
I know, it's strange.
You make the music with that stuff, you listen to it on that stuff.
So one of our things is taking some of our dealers.
You couldn't have one without the other, could you?
No. So it's nice to take hi-fi dealers into a studio.
Yeah.
So they can see what's being done. And one of the demonstrations, which is really a good one, is play a drum kit without anything in the way, no compression, no EQ, and you play it through the pair of speakers, and it'll sound like somebody hitting a load of cardboard with a stick.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the engineer compresses it so the speaker can cope with it.
Yeah.
And then equalizes it. And then eventually it sounds like the drum kit in the other room, but you know that he's had to do a lot to the sound. And it's a good demonstration to sort of, I think, probably what I'd call hi-fi purists, to realise that you have to do that for your speakers to be able, or your hi-fi to be able to reproduce it.
Yeah.
If you didn't do all that processing and all that work, it would sound awful because
the grooves would be that wide on your records.
Yeah, that's right. Well, exactly. You get one groove on the side of an album.
Yeah,
with a big peak on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's quite.
And there's compression in vinyl in mastering. People don't think there is. The digital's all compression. It's like you have to compress
Everything has it.
Yeah, you compress it with vinyl recordings as well. You wouldn't get them on the grooves.
So it's an interesting experience to see that and actually hear it.
Yeah, that's something I'd love to.
I mean, we're getting better. I mean, every year we're getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great example of it. It gives you a sort of a goal to work to.
Well, my last question, Peter, is what is the future of high-end audio in your mind? So we've sort of the last 2 minutes have been basically on that, haven't they? There is a lot to do,
There is a lot to do. I suspect that a lot of hi-fis will consist of a pair of speakers with a wireless receiver in it,
streamer,
and power amps in it, and that's all you have in the room. Everything will be from either mobile or from
interior design is going more minimalist. It certainly has been recently.
So that's one scenario, but the other scenario is we know we're going through the world's going through a huge retro phase at the moment with vinyl, cassettes.
We've been riding it for 15 years.
And it's continuing, and that whole side, because it's visual and it's physical.
It is.
So although technically you could do that with a pair of speakers and do everything through them, one wonders whether that will ever happen.
Well, people like to own stuff.
They like to
look after it,
and it's got to look great. So who knows?
I mean, you can go like that on your phone and play anything that's ever recorded, pretty much on digital, but they're done. But there's something about the romance of taking it out of the sleeve, looking after it, because you've got to look after the record. And then you've got the sleeve is this big and you can read all the things, and it's another dimension to the experience. Then you play it, and then you look after it, and you set everything up.
I think so.
It's just so much involved in playing a record, or a reel-to-reel. That's even more in depth, isn't it?
I mean, reel-to-reel's really taking off at the moment.
They're like classic cars. I mean, our friend Steve Bennett in Guildford is a service guy we use. He's brilliant. I mean, all he does is reel-to-reels, nothing else anymore, just reel-to-reels.
It's amazing.
And he's so busy, and they are, I mean, you look at films now, and you see how many high-end audio bits are in films now. Record players was record players. Now it's reel-to-reels. They're in loads.
Yes, and then the only film in the last 10 years has had somebody playing a record.
One of the first things. Looper.
Yes.
Set in the future, and he's got a gyro deck because it looks futuristic. And weirdly, it goes back to the origins of the gyro deck. The transcript is using Clockwork Orange, and that's again a futuristic film with a current record player. So the audio industry were sometimes ahead of their time in design. It can look futuristic even though it's not.
The main thing is that people are engaged with audio. I think the only danger we've got with an industry is we don't engage with our customers enough. And that's why hi-fi has slipped down, people's wants list. People say it's because there's more money, more things to spend your money on. I don't really think that's true. I think it's a bit of an excuse because, I mean, back in the 60s, when hi-fi was really starting to get a grip in the late 60s, colour television came in. People were paying £300-400 for a colour telly, which is the equivalent of like £6,000 to £8,000 now. Or probably more, 10,000. And there were always competitive things to spend your money on, but people did still buy audio gear because they recognise it. And we kind of lost that a bit. And part of perhaps trying to do a museum and trying to get some PR out of that, we might be able to try and engage and perhaps attract people who aren't hi-fi.
Buying real hi-fi.
And people who aren't hi-fi enthusiasts who
Majority of people these days, I mean, I get advertising people ring me up and going, what do you do? Oh, we hi-fi? What's hi-fi? They don't even know what the term means. No. We get people ringing us up calling us Wi-Fi hanger.
Oh, yes.
Because they've never heard of hi-fi.
I know.
Well, stereo, music.
Or the other one is you say hi-fi, or does anybody buy that anymore? They think it's something old-fashioned. And
well, they do. People who appreciate it. And then you sit them in front of a system and they'll go, I had no idea
No.
music could sound like that.
Yeah. The trouble is you've got to connect that with them paying the money for it.
Yeah.
You know, they'll often hear it and then they'll go, how much? You know, and that's what's changed. I mean, as I say, back in the day,
people will buy a watch for £5,000,
well,
just
exactly,
like that.
And in the day, in the 70s, people would spend the equivalent of tens of thousands of pounds on hi-fi without really batting an eyelid. Whereas now,
but things with internet streaming and Netflix and stuff, people watch a lot more telly.
They do.
So that's what it is. I guess. Yeah.
But you know,
there we go.
It's all about getting the word out there.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
Expose people.
Yeah, we'll do our best, Pete, on that. Well, that's pretty much wrapped us up. We've been going on for a little while, but thank you very much, Peter, for coming along. It's been a pleasure. Always is.
Yes, and you, Steve. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries at all.
Brilliant.
Hopefully that was okay and there was no squeaking.
No squeaking.
Cheers, guys. Check all our other videos out on our YouTube channel. Links can be found from hifihanger.co.uk. Cheers. See you later.